Excited because a great family friend of mine is actually agreed to be our speaker today, and I think he's going to bring us some really relevant content. But I'm Scott Vedder. He is actually a best-selling author. He wrote a book called Signs of a Great Resume, so very recruiting focused. That probably comes from his background on the recruitment side at Disney. He's conducted over 5,000 interviews for them. In addition to being a best-selling author, Scott is also really invested. He's in helping veterans transition from the military to the civilian world. An effect of that is that he's actually been invited by First Lady Michelle Obama to the White House, as well as the Office of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs at the Pentagon to be a guest speaker for them and involved in some panels. He's got quite a background. I could go on, but today I'd like to introduce him. He's going to speak with us about having authenticity in business, which clearly is a huge part of our culture at Kavaliro. So without any further ado, Scott, I'll let you go ahead and take it.
Thanks so much for your kind introduction, Kelly. You're in charge of all my introductions from here on.
Okay.
I appreciate it. And hello, Kavaliro team. What a pleasure to meet with all of you today. As Kelly mentioned, yes, I have a soft spot in my heart for recruiting. It's what I spent a lot of time doing. I did over 5,000 interviews before I stopped counting. And most people's resumes were awful, so I wrote a book about it, chiefly to vent my own frustrations, but also because I knew it would help people. And it took off, became a bestseller, and I'd meet veterans wherever I'd go who'd say, hey, what about us? It's different. And I'd say, what do I know? I didn't serve in the military. But my dad and my grandfather both did. They were both Army. And when they got out, no one was there to help them. There were not transition programs like we have today. And certainly, and perhaps particularly in the Vietnam era, veterans were not always welcomed warmly back. And certainly a lot of that is changing today. But we still have lots of work to do. And veterans are an interesting way to start the conversation today because being a veteran is, I think, the only dimension of diversity that you opt into. The rest of us are born however we are, and we have no choice as to what dimensions of diversity we represent and are part of our authentic selves. But veterans do. And what is interesting there is if we don't get to choose who we are, why would we have to choose to be our authentic selves at work? And so that's what I'm going to talk today about is authenticity in the workplace. And really a central idea around why I think this is so important is because when you bring your whole self to work, you just perform better. And when employers create an environment where people can bring their whole selves to work, it's a better environment. It's more productive, it's more efficient, and it just feels better to work there. I know culture is a particularly important topic to you at Kavaliro, and by all means, it sounds like you're doing great work on culture. This is not a reflection of your current state. This is to say that the more we can welcome people to bring their whole selves to work, the better it will be for all parties involved. Anything done fully is better than anything done halfway. Nobody's ever said, for my birthday this year, I want sweetened bread. No, you want a cake. You want the whole cake, and you want icing on that cake. So it's important that we let people bring their whole selves to work and that we celebrate it when they do. Here's why it is inefficient not to do that. If you have to think about things as simple as, can I put a picture of my spouse on my workstation? That's time wasted analyzing things about yourself that you cannot change when you could be putting those towards productive work. And by the way, it's an emotional energy wasted too. And it doesn't feel good to have to analyze things like, will people judge me for who I am? And so you have to be your authentic self if you're going to be fully productive and fully happy and engaged at work. You being your authentic self also helps others to learn. The more people learn, the less they fear, the less they have questions, the fewer stereotypes that prove to be anything to think about, because they're often formed in the absence of information. Work also may be the only safe space that some people have to be their authentic self. Think of someone who is LGBTQ+ and who is out at work in an opening and welcoming environment at work, but maybe they can't be out at home. Think of the emotional strain and think of the difficulty that poses for them, where work might be the only safe space. So it's incumbent on all of us as leaders, as professionals, to give a welcoming space for everyone to bring their full self. You know, if you spend generously only 8 hours a day at work, many of us spend more, that's a third of your life. Why should you be a fraction of yourself for a third of your life? I don't think you should. I hope that you'll agree. So a little about my story. You know, I take great pride in being an out gay male professional in the workforce. And I have been fortunate to work in places where that has not been something that might jeopardize my career or my opportunities. And I recognize that's not everybody's story. And so part of the reason I am my authentic self and out, proud, and visible is to help support those who don't reap those benefits. And that actually started with my marriage. So in full disclosure, I have been married more than 20 times, all to the same man. But because of how marriage equality rolled out across the country, we were differently married in different places, depending on what year it was and what state we were standing in. But one of the first opportunities that happened here in Central Florida, where I live, and I know many of you may be, is that Orlando and Orange County adopted a domestic partner registry where you could get some of the benefits offered to married couples as a same-sex couple. One of those was something like hospital visitation. Before the domestic partnership registry, a hospital could refuse to allow a partner to go visit their partner when they were sick. Doesn't that sound awful? So when Orlando and Orange County adopted it, my husband Tony and I volunteered to be among the first couples married, although we weren't really married, but we did it in a big way. They actually invited us to join Commissioner Patty Sheehan on the stage at Lake Eola at the big Walt Disney Amphitheater. And so I like to jokingly say that 100,000 people came to my wedding, including Kelly, and none of them brought a gift. And part of that's our failure. We didn't register, but you know, it was important to be that visible because incremental steps towards equality help to show people that, look, there are people that deserve to be treated fairly and equally and who want those 1,100 some odd rights that you get as a married couple that we couldn't have. So we fortunately had the means to go to San Francisco to get married in California once the law of the land there said that gay marriage was legal. And at the time we were married, it covered about 13 states. But consider this, when we came back to Orlando, we were domestic partners in Orlando and Orange County, married in 13 states, and just boyfriends in Kissimmee. And this is part of the analysis that has to go on in your head in terms of representing your authentic self and in terms of what diversity looks like to you, is you have to be vocal about what you're experiencing because people may not realize the difference. And by educating and being your authentic self, you help people to learn. And that's why it was important to us. My husband and I were both part of the Gay Chamber of Commerce. And it sounds odd to think that there's even a need for a gay chamber, but think about small business owners who have to transact business with other businesses that may not be open and accepting of people who identify as LGBTQ. So we joined that chamber. I'm happy to say I was awarded the New Business of the Year award in 2014 because of how vocal I have been in demonstrating authenticity in business. But this plays out in big business too. So you know, working in the Fortune 100, I had a vice president approach me maybe 15 years into my career. And we'd worked together some time, and he says to me, he says, "Scott, can I ask you a personal question?" And I applauded him for his desire to learn. I said, "Oh, well, sure, absolutely." He goes, "When did you come out?" And I didn't wait a moment. I said, "Yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that, and the day before that." Because I have to come out every single day. I've come out to all of you today, 6 minutes ago. And this is what it's like to be LGBTQ in America. And that's because the default assumption is not that you might be LGBTQ. I asked my boss, I said, "When was the last time you had to do any kind of analysis before you said the words, 'my wife'?" They said, "Never." I said, "That's exactly the point." And I think that's what we're seeing now today in America with all of the effort around Black Lives Matter and just having a bigger conversation around what's going on inside individual people's experiences, because we just don't know until we open a conversation and until people are open about it. So I applauded my boss for asking that. And it helped me feel more comfortable at work, and it helped open his eyes as well, even in an already welcoming environment. This played out in a big way when, as Kelly said, I was invited to the office of First Lady Michelle Obama at the White House. So let me set the stage for you. It's December, and I'm at the White House for like the biggest day of my professional career. I'm there as an expert resource on military to civilian career transitions, and I'm gonna meet like in the First Lady's office, just huge stakes. So I get there and I'm put at ease right away, because in the East reception room, I meet Sonny Obama, the president's dog, who's like blissfully unaware that she's the dog of the leader of the free world. So that put me at ease a little bit. But then I meet with this senior executive that is kind of going to show me to where the meeting is. And as we're walking through the halls, he looks down and he sees the ring on my finger. And he asks, very innocently, "Is your wife here?" And now I have a decision to make. And on the biggest day of my career, I got to come out again. And I go, all right, what do I do with this? And now, of course, there are stereotypes about military culture and certainly, what it's like to work in an environment that can be viewed as less than welcoming by some people. And I had a choice to make. Should I be my authentic self, or do I just say, no, my wife isn't here, which is accurate, but my husband was. He was right outside. And so I said, no, my husband's here, and he's wonderfully here to support me as we have this important conversation today. And this senior leader looked at me and he said, with a smile on his face, "That's great. Here's why it was particularly notable. That very night was the lighting of the White House Christmas tree. And every year, the White House extends invitations to families of military service members to attend the Christmas tree lighting. It was the very year that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. That was the policy against serving openly in the military." And he says to me, "That's great. This is the first year we can have same-sex couples invited to the White House." And it gave me some perspective, because for as many times as I have to come out at work and have that analysis in my head of, should I say my husband? Is it okay to put a picture of him on the wall? What will that mean? Military families had it a lot harder. Can you imagine having to not talk about your entire personal life just so that you can dedicate your focus to serving our country? That was really tough. And it was a moment where I said, look, my situation is definitely not one where there's enormous hardship placed on me for coming out at work, but certainly there are impacts to many dimensions of diversity that I'll never fully understand unless I talk about it, unless I ask, and I try to get smarter. So while Don't Ask, Don't Tell has fallen and marriage equality is now the law of the land, and you, I'm sure, are paying attention, especially those in recruiting jobs, that the Bostock Supreme Court case now indicates that sexual orientation and gender identity are protected classes under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. That is great. And we are making important strides towards allowing people and enabling people to be their full, authentic selves at work. But there is still more work to do. So today I'm leaving you with a call to action. There are just 3 simple things I think we can all do, because we are all leaders in this effort. You don't have to be a manager. You don't have to be a full-time employee in order to show leadership at work when it comes to authenticity in business. So number 1, if you see something, say something. We need to move from simple allyship of, oh, I support you, to when you see injustice or discrimination or racial profiling or any of the things that thankfully Black Lives Matter movement has brought to the forefront of visibility for speaking up, you need to speak up, and you need to be confident to support overtly as an advocate for those people who may not have some of the same advantages or may be may be discriminated against in the workforce. And by doing that, if you believe that every person deserves that basic human dignity, you're bringing your authentic self to work. That's part of who you are, is an advocate for equality, an advocate for those who do not enjoy some of the same benefits of a dimension of diversity you may have. And so that is important. If you see something, say something. Number 2, create formal and informal opportunities to connect. Sure, you can come down to the Come Out with Pride Festival with 100,000 people and be there, but go there even if you don't identify as LGBTQ. Even if you don't celebrate a certain holiday, get engaged around what that holiday means to the people who celebrate it. Learn. And lastly, actively and intently listen. Ask questions when you don't know. A good example of this might be someone who is going through a gender transition. Ask that person what gender pronoun is appropriate if you don't know. The transgender persons I have talked to would much rather answer that question and help you learn than to be ignored or to have you guess and not know any better. They'd rather have an open conversation about it. And so the more you ask, the more you intently listen, and the more you take an active role in authenticity in business and show that humility and desire to learn, I think we all get better with it. Authenticity makes us stronger. It's good for people and it's good for business. Thank you so much for having me here with you today.
That was so great. Thank you so much, Scott. Yeah, that was really, truly wonderful. I'm so glad that you're able to join us and take the time to do this. So I'm going to open up to questions, but before I do that, I want to know you've got a team of 40 to 50 people on here. What can we do to help you right now?
Great. Well, I think, I'll put on that veteran transition hat for a moment and just say, I think a lot of us would agree. Military veterans are some of the best job employees we have. They're just some of the worst job candidates, because the one thing the military does not make everyone awesome at is being a job candidate. So when you're a recruiter reviewing a veteran resume and you don't get something about it because it's in military jargon or you're not sure how it directly relates, please take a second look and pause. And if you need to, get on the phone with a veteran or someone who's veteran connected to help get that understanding. That little bit of extra effort may sound like, oh, it's another thing to do. I'm already busy. I have 100 recs to fill and I have all these clients to make happy. But that candidate may be a very talented candidate who's just not good at talking about themselves, because the very notion of military service is one of selfless service. And so the majority of the candidates that I talk to, and I consult one-on-one with a lot of military veterans through nonprofit organizations and otherwise, they say, I don't like talking about myself. And I say, okay, I get it. Well, good news. I don't want you to talk about yourself. I want you to talk about what you can do for me in the organization. But if they're not doing that effectively and they don't show their best experiences, take the time to ask questions and learn more. It will pay off, because veterans make great hires and have really valuable skills to bring. If you have questions and you don't have a resource to go to, please connect with me on LinkedIn right now. I will be that resource for you. Don't hesitate to ask. I am an open book. And if I don't know, I bet you I know somebody who does, because I have helped thousands of veterans on their transition, including many in fields like cybersecurity, information technology, and very high-tech roles that have skills that are pretty hard to come by and may be an asset to a company like Kavaliro. They
definitely are. I'm sure you have at least 6 or 7 recruiters going to reach out and ask if you know top
Here are all the recs I have to fill.
Cleared professionals. Awesome. All right, well, I'll open the floor to everyone else. Does anyone have a question for Scott about his background, about his books, about being at the White House, or anything like that?
I got a quick question for you. So you talked about the different laws and how they kind of affect your life. Do you look at those when you're thinking about going into business with certain companies? Do you look at their policies as well as even the state that they're headquartered in when you're looking for placing contractors there, or just doing business in general with them?
Yeah, in a way, the recent ruling made that easier, because now it's not an option. Before, yes, I would definitely look at company profile pages to say things, which would say often things like, our equal employment statement includes gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, and other characteristics that are not protected classes. I think that's good business, because you want to place people in an environment where they will thrive. The same goes for veterans. A lot of organizations have a "we support the troops" kind of statement, but maybe it's just a marketing statement. I usually dig a little deeper and go, all right, so what are you actively doing to support the troops, so to speak? And what is the veteran community like in your organization? And that's a vocal population if they feel there is some kind of injustice or malfeasance or poor treatment of people in an environment. Unfortunately, it's usually easy for me to figure out some added intel, if you will. But I think you can put good information out there and tell some of those stories of people that are thriving from across the spectrums of diversity. Storytelling is a powerful tool, and the more people hear and see stories of people that share some experiences like them, the better that is. And that's way more valuable than an ad campaign or sponsoring a Pride event. It's actually telling the real stories of people that have worked with you and have thrived with you, and why the environment you're creating enables them to do that.
Oh, that's awesome.
I just have
The other thing is we're going to definitely plug the books and things when we put this on social, but do you want to say what the name of the book is so that people can go out and get it?
I'm glad you asked. It's Signs of a Great Resume, and it's available wherever books are sold, but that means mostly Amazon. But you can also get it on scottvedder.com. And then I also wrote a follow-up edition just for vets, which is Signs of a Great Resume, the Veterans Edition. And currently, the quarantine has afforded me some extra time to work on Signs of a Great Interview, which is coming soon to a Amazon near you. So that'll be out in short order.
Awesome.
Bill, did you have something?
Yeah, just real quick. I saw your background working in particularly with, first off, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. My phone's been blowing up from many of the folks on this call saying how great it is. So I really, really appreciate you doing this. Authenticity, diversity, these are some of our core values of the company. And I have been, and some of the people on this call have been lucky enough to attend Disney Institute trainings. We started our company out with some Disney Institute programming, and it also did that on our 5-year anniversary as a company. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what Disney's going through. I saw some campaigning about protecting the magic, and it reminded me of kind of a term that we use here, protecting the special, which is also what our conference theme was this past year. These are trying times for culture. And yes, I appreciate you taking notice of who we are, and our culture really, really is important to us. But as we grow and we learn to communicate with each other this way, it's so much different than it used to be. Can you maybe just touch upon that with the hint of what you did at the Disney Institute?
Sure. So a big old caveat here, I do not represent the viewpoint of the Walt Disney Company, affiliated companies, et cetera, et cetera. But more broadly speaking, what I believe about culture isn't a series of mission statements and a wonderful video that kind of shows, hey, it's important. It's what we do every single day. And that has to adapt over time as conditions change. And, you know, no big company is immune from that. No middle or small size company is immune from that. It is chiefly the behavior of leaders that sets the tone for what it feels like to work somewhere. And by leader, I do not mean manager, vice president, director of regional whatevers. I mean every single one of us demonstrating leadership every single day. And that's, you know, part of what we're talking about when I mentioned about authenticity and your role that you can play. You have to own it. And the organization should set up a way to steward that culture and to embed it into every single thing that we do. So if diversity and inclusion is important at Kavaliro, my question is, what are you doing in every meeting to make sure that voices are heard, to make sure the right people are at the table and more people are at the table and have a seat? I saw something online today that we're not fighting for a seat at the table, we're fighting for a bigger table. And well, that speaks to a way about what I think we can do. We can broaden and widen our aperture of the perspectives we consider, and we have to steward our culture as a really valuable asset. You should put as much time and effort towards what it feels to work here and how it feels to work here as you do towards what products that we sell and what solutions do we provide for clients.
That's awesome. Fantastic. I feel like we could probably ask you a million more questions, but I don't think this will be the last interaction Kavaliro has with Scott Vedder. So we'll look forward to that. I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. This means so much to me personally. So thank you so much. And for really echoing a lot of the beliefs that we already have implemented here and hopefully are reminded of today. So hope you have a great rest of the day. I think the rest of us are going to stay on and Bill will close us out.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Kavaliro.